We're sideways, aren't we? Son of a bitch. God damn it. Don't touch the goddamn thing. It's going to fall over now.
No farts.
Is it working? All right. All right. At the last minute, we were trying to like figure out how to turn the microphone on his phone, and we were having like a fucking mad panic moment. There's like 1 minute left.
For the record, I told him like 24 minutes ago we should get set up, and he's no, we got plenty of time.
Yeah, we're chilling, man.
Tons of time.
Okay, well, this is our first trial run, and to be honest, we're trying to be as relaxed about it as possible, because we're, you know, it's a stressful thing we're a part of doing this, and so the less stress that we have to deal with, the better. We want to do this once a week because in 2012, 13, 14, it was uncharted territory for us. We had the opportunity to talk to Dennis Manouge a fair bit and learn some of his lessons and things we didn't want to make a mistake doing, like over-engaging and getting ourselves burned out, which we've done plenty. So with this case going back to trial now, we need to arrange how much time and investment we want to put into this thing. So our attitude is that we're going to do this once a week, every Tuesday, and it's going to be our day for an engagement. And every other day, we're offline. Unless it's something emergency, it'd be a direct message. But other than that, I have a big problem staying off of Facebook. So for me at least, and Brian agrees that we need to have this on a schedule for this is our day of engagement. So here we are. I'm getting mixed messages on the information I find about Facebook Live. It says 30 minutes some places, and then it says 90 minutes others. So we're just going to keep going. We're going to wrap it up for the 30-minute mark with David Macleod. He's going to be on the phone with us in about 10-15 minutes. And at the 30-minute mark, we're going to say goodbye to him. And then we're just going to keep going. And if it keeps going, people keep having questions, and we'll see how far we can take it. So
yeah, and it's important for us. Every now and then we get a second or two to go talk to government. And we want to make sure that when we talk to them, not only are we speaking intelligently here, but we're bringing forward the priorities that are actually the priorities that you have. I can always go there and say, well, here's the world according to Brian. But there's so much more value if I approach them and say, hey, look, 50 guys, 200 guys, 500 guys say this, and they want to know about this topic. So as your questions come up, we'll do our best to handle it. And but at the very least, at least from there, we'll know what's going on. So let's have them.
There's a lag here. I just put this on here, and he's...
So we're hearing ourselves from 10 seconds. It's a little odd.
It's a bit of a lag, but we're going to be able to look at your questions with this. He's got his phone up right there. Hello, Linda. Hello, Guy. David Macleod's here, ready to go. Tim James is up in
Charlotte's.
Queen Charlotte's right now. Our buddy Timmy's up there, and he's kicking it up like a hippie beachcomber.
Track the deer for me, Tim. Let me know all the good spots.
Absolutely. So a bunch of people are here. I just have to turn the volume off on this because there's a bit of a lag. So what do you want to say here? Because no one's asking us a question.
Okay, so
just about our intent with this thing.
Yeah, so let's go with that. First of all, we want to make sure that people have a place to go ask questions, but ask them in the right way. We've sat there at the stakeholder meetings before, and one of the problems we have there is it's normally it's a briefing. It's the department turning around and saying, here's what's going on. And we need to kind of turn that a little bit on its head. We want to be able to approach them and say, okay, well, actually, we'll tell you what's going on from the receiver of the service point of view. And that's kind of where I want to take it.
Yeah, with the stakeholder meetings, they're eating up 90% of the dialogue time. And then when we do have a small working group opportunity, the group I was put off with 12 others, they said, we want to know what you think about what service excellence means to you. And here, we're going to talk about it for an hour and a half. And all these people are fighting over each other, wanting to give what they think it means. And it was a big fucking waste of time. We could have been talking about some real shit that's happening to people specifically, like the recent O'Toole programs that came up last year, talking about the caregiver benefit that's not even, people aren't even getting eligibility for it, and a lot of other things like that. But instead, they screwed us around with something like that, and it's a big issue. We wouldn't necessarily do this on the public group, but behind our closed doors with the Equitas veterans, I'm letting you in on that we need to be coming to these stakeholder meetings with our own data, because they have data and it ain't real. Like I said earlier when we talked for a half hour, they had a piece of data on our mental health committee saying that 80% of Afghan vets are still serving, and there's no way in a million years that there's still 80%. So,
well, I'll give you an example of stuff we want to hear from your perspective. So take the PIA, which we've now heard is the CIA, whatever you're going to call it. By the way, it didn't slip either of our attentions that the word permanent was dropped. Obviously, there's a reason behind that. But when we looked at it, you know, it's often presented, if we use that as an example, it's presented like, oh, hey, these guys get these things. And, well, you've got A and then they get B. Well, what we found out, of course, and you'll know this as good as us, is, well, you don't actually get B. 40% of people don't get any of it. Out of the people that do, you're broken down into 93% getting level 3, 6% getting level 2, 1% getting level 1, and yet they try and sell it to the public as, oh, here's this thing that everyone's getting. But for us to be able to take that and run with it to government and put them on the spot and say, hey, you need to marry up what you're saying with what's actually happening. We need to know from you guys how it's actually panning out for you. So I want to hear some of that in the next couple minutes.
So Brian Har asked a question. He wants to know what an update looks like for our case right now. And we have an email that I don't think is something that is going to hurt to say to these guys.
Yeah,
it's just 2 paragraphs. Do you want to read that to me?
Oh, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. I mean, I got it right in front of me here. So essentially, the government has looked at it and said, let's just hear what the court has to say. And the Equitas side has said, well, hold on a minute here. Things have changed in the last year. There's been adjustments on benefits, but there's also been certain acknowledgments that have come through the House of Commons. And without pretending to be lawyers, our team has approached the court and said, we need to not only go back, we need to see what the differences are and if it's changed anything. And so that's actually happening now. So more or less the Reader's Digest version, because that's the only one we really have the intelligence and time to go into, is lawyers are going to go back in front of court and essentially place in front of the court, hey, we think our situation's different, or we don't, and we'll let the judge decide where it goes from there. So that's hopefully that answers Brian's question. We go back here?
Yeah, I can go back. So we have a guest coming on here that he's one of the original board members of the Equitas thing, and midway along he moved on to other things. He was running for the Liberal Party until the bill, the act where they were allowing people to get breaches of
There was a security
C-51.
Yeah, a security bill that came out and had a lot of effects on personal privacy. So there was a strong reaction across the country. That was the one.
And he wasn't comfortable with that, and he pulled out, and I get it. And more recently, last summer, him and a fellow by the name of Harold Leduc published a book, A Dirty Little Skirmish, which is about the issues and experiences that they've had dealing with the bureaucracy of Veteran Affairs Canada. Having Harold Leduc been a member of the VRAB, one of the judges on that, and Dave Macleod being someone who's been an advocate for several years. He can probably fill that in better than I can. We're just going to get him on the phone now, Dave, and I'm dialing you right now, put you on speaker.
You stay on the line while your call is completed.
And we're going to dial him into this conversation. Hey, Dave. How are you doing?
I'm okay.
It's Aaron.
Oh, you're all broken up. Okay, good.
And you got Brian McKenna here. Good to hear from you.
Hey, Brian.
Can everyone hear him okay out there? Or do we have to turn it up louder? Can someone give a thumbs up like? Well, we'll just assume yes. So, how are you doing today?
I'm fine, thanks. I thought we were doing this by Skype. I was all set up that way.
Yeah, I sent you a message saying that I was having a problem with bandwidth, saying it was weak signal for us to do the Facebook Live, so I did send you a text.
Yeah, Sylvan's come through. He can hear us. Let's press forward.
All right. So, what can you tell us about your experience with the Liberal Party?
Are we talking about that today, or are we talking about the...
Well, what would you like to talk about? What are you comfortable with?
Well, I'll be happy to talk about the Liberal Party some other time.
Okay.
Mostly because I want a bigger audience for that one, because everybody needs a good kick in the nuts every now and then, and
Well,
it's the Liberals' turn.
When we get this better organized and we start getting a good enough rapport to be more public with this, then we can do this again, eh, Dave?
Oh, sure, by all means.
All right.
So tonight, you were talking about data. As a matter of fact, one of the first things you guys brought up was the lack of data, right?
Absolutely. They don't give us any in these meetings. They say, they have a PowerPoint presentation and with a little bullet point, like the 80% of Afghan vets are still serving, and then they move on to the next slide. It's like, whoa, wait a minute, and they don't provide any proof of these things. And
Yeah, and it's also a big question between what data do they have and what data do they release. I mean, it's a federal department like any other. It's going to keep stuff to itself. But, I'll give you just a simple example. Coroner's reports, for example, list occupation in certain jurisdictions across the country. So when someone comes back to you and says, hey, we don't know how many deaths we have due to self-inflicted wounds and what those people did for a living, we find that to be untrue. And
Exactly.
What do you think about that?
That investigation is really, really important. The problem is that each Canadian province and territory has their own jurisdiction on that. It's not a federal authority kind of thing. However, data surrounding suicide, medical issues, the unexplained deaths, and there are some of those, they're lost within the provinces because the provinces don't do the research, because let's face it, they're cash strapped like anyone else. Any other entity. The cause and the manner of how a veteran dies is incredibly important because from this information you can get guidance and recommendations on how to actually do military healthcare planning,
right,
especially for things like mental illness and protective gear. Most people don't even think that far down the road, but the stuff that the battle rattle we had overseas, that's one era of stuff. There is a whole new generation already.
right.
So you hit the nail on the head with the death investigation material, and it's critically important. That's actually one of the paragraphs we dumped into the book. When you go to read this chapter, it's only chapter 4. It's only like 4 or 5 pages long. And you know why it's so short? It's because there are so many things to investigate. I started making a list of all the things that I wanted to cover, and it ended up being 3 pages of single-line items.
Yeah.
3 freaking pages. So to me, that indicates that there's a huge, huge issue here. But more importantly, it's bigger than one guy or a pair of guys can actually handle. So one of the things that I was kind of scratching my head over, and I'm really looking back on feedback for this, is how about a royal commission?
Yeah, the Australians are trying to do that right now. Have you been following those guys down there?
Yeah, a little bit, but it's not exactly clear as to the direction they're going.
Right. And I know Pat Stogan's been pushing that for a couple of years now as well. We need to at least have one firm, one-liner piece of data, like something like the suicide issue would be number one, the number one worst one for them, to tear the head open on this, to force something like that to happen.
Actually, here's a beautiful one-liner for you then. No government agency, including Veterans Affairs, tracks veterans' health, the service-based environmental injuries, or the successes after service. Now, how the hell do you know you're doing a good job if you're not tracking your data? How do you know you're being successful?
And Dave,
Because they
with
say
that,
so.
with that, Dave, so say you're wrong. Say we're wrong, and that information is held. Then give it to us. Then let's stop going to these meetings. I don't say we should stop. We should continue to go to the meetings. But let's stop going and pretending that these are unknowns. If that information is out there, then let's have it. And let's not talk about the wrong number when the right number is available. Is that something that resonates with you?
No, I buy into that 1,000%, my good man. But the big thing is that, and VAC has actually proven this, has actually stated this to me and to Harold LeDuc. The
Right.
So there's people out there that actually need help, but haven't bothered to try. There's also people out there that are scared to ask for help simply because they're afraid they're going to lose their job or lose their civilian-based job after their military experience. There's also a real hesitation on behalf of government to hold that data, because then you start talking about environmental injuries and you start talking about mental illness. And one of the things that I mentioned in the book is I kind of cheated. I went off of my own experience, right? Now, I was in Cyprus, big deal. There was nothing really bad there except for suntans and like way too much weightlifting.
Yeah.
But when I went to Bosnia, what I found was there's an absolute amazing amount of environmental concerns. I mean, the guys that have been to Bosnia know you had to move bodies, you had to dig them up, you had to live through the various problems that existed with what was that place name? Chorlichi. It was a cement factory, for God's sake.
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah, okay, so was I. So you refine particle dust all the time, and that coats your lungs.
Every morning you could write messages to each other with your finger on the grizzly from all the concrete dust.
Exactly. And
Good morning.
When I coughed up every morning, it was like getting cement out of my lungs. Another thing, you go to Croatia, not Croatia, you go to Kosovo, and in the Dirrenia Valley where all the Canadians were, that was a mining region. So there's all kinds of carcinogenic heavy metals that we were using to fill sandbags with. On top of that, let's go off to Afghanistan, where the bulk of the people we're talking about is they're breathing fine particle dust continuously, and there's a real lack of understanding of what desert dust and its microbiology does to us. It's something that the Americans actually started digging into because they were spending so much time in places like Iraq, Afghanistan.
Yeah.
The air poo.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I was reading this recently, Dave, and they were talking about when you talk about different medicines, for example, or exposures. You look at something like thalidomide, for example. It was prescribed, but when we knew better, we did better. And so when we knew that was a bad thing, it ended. But when you flip over to a military side of something like, say, mefloquine, when we knew better, we didn't necessarily do better.
No, we didn't. Do you remember something called ISG?
No, tell me.
ISG was insomnial, blah, 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 globulin. And it's something that you will remember the shots that you bent over, and they put one shot in each butt cheek. And it felt like a golf ball for about a week and a half.
By the way, this is Sasha. She's saying hi.
Well, anyway, nobody really knows what that stuff was about. On top of that, there's clear indications that we, overall, as veterans, have been used generally as guinea pigs or as expendable items. And that, really resonates here. Halifax isn't that far away, huge Navy town, and they have huge problems with cancer now. The guys getting off the ships, or getting off the patrol frigates.
Right.
Those patrol frigates are producing all kinds of fresh water that the sailors need, but it's contaminated.
Right.
And, there's a whole chapter in the book dedicated specifically to the cancer that this causes. As a matter of fact, we talk about one lady's experience in particular. She's a widow now. And the absolutely horrible cancer that her husband went through. So we're talking about, it's almost like willful neglect. You mention that to a lawyer, they just spin, automatically going insane, because it's a very dangerous phrase. Willful neglect or willful blindness. And in this case, when you talk about veterans, and you talk about all of the lack of data that actually exists right now, it almost comes across as willful blindness.
Dave, do you believe that if we went province to province and got a little team going in every province, that this would be something that I think that whole splintered world we live in, where people might come together on this one thing and help get this census together?
It might be really good if you start focusing, like if the groups that were formed in each province actually focused
Yeah, we often find, or I should say, my opinion is that, when you look at all things healthcare in the country, obviously we have the divide where the federal government winds up doing a lot of the funding and all the delivering is going provincial. But often I find the different departments use that to kind of punt responsibility to the province. And I don't really have a better way of describing it than that, but here's the funding for the pill, go get it on your provincial system. Here's, long-term care beds, but you're going to have Saskatchewan's version of it or BC's version of it. And you saw the third individual we have with us right now is a service dog, mine. But there's 13 different standards across the country as to what that is. So is that part of your experience? Because I tell you, it's certainly part of mine, is that every time something touches on health, from VAC and D&D, but largely VAC, you hear, okay, well, here's the funding mechanism, but don't bring up anything else from us because that's provincial. It feels like they're punting responsibility. What's your thought?
Oh, exactly. But the sad part is that I've tried to engage the health minister on this, and she just didn't really want to hear it. It's as though there's, once again, willful blindness. And I think a lot of it has to do with not wanting to rock the boat with Ottawa. And this goes all the way back to funding and all the way back to the attitudes towards funding. If you rock the boat with Ottawa, you won't get that money.
Right. Hey, let me just cut in here. Everybody out there, if you have a question for the three of us there, jump in there. We're at 21-minute mark. We're going to keep going and see how long. It says 30 minutes. It says an hour and a half somewhere else. We'll just keep going. So if you have a question for us, get her up there.
Or for Dave, we'll pose it to him on your behalf.
Oh, he's right here. So I asked you a question. You diverted. You focus on the mental health or the health minister. But do you believe that this is something that all the veteran groups would get behind? I don't mean the traditional ones. I mean all the faction, sub-faction of Facebook.
Yeah, I think it is something that everybody can get behind. It'll take some. It would take some real effort. But imagine if all of these groups from every province and territory went and visited their minister, within say a month of each other, and they all started pushing the button. And that would be, say a month or 2 months, maybe even 3 months prior to them going to the annual healthcare ministers conference.
Right.
If we can actually, I know for a fact that right now in Nova Scotia there are just over 14,000 VAC clients. That's correct.
Yep.
But that's actually not the true number because there's many other guys that are using the healthcare system, the provincial healthcare system, to manage their healthcare requirements as veterans.
Okay, Dave, I'm going to hold you on that one for a sec because I think, it's a sound point. And coming out of Barry Westholm here, his question is, in your opinion, what's the weakest link? What's the one weakest link in resolving veterans' issues? So take it away, Dave. What do you think?
Oh, man, that's a head-scratcher from hell.
I think hiding the suicide data. Sorry, go ahead, Dave.
You know what? I think it's actually Barry's point. Barry's key interest, as most people know, is the entry for the JPSU. And I really think that it all starts to crumble right there. Because if you're not identified early on, and what your needs are early on, you're screwed.
Yeah, it's the gap, right?
Exactly.
The government's calling it the gap.
Yeah, one of the things I think I've identified as a bit of an issue, want to hear what you guys think about that. I actually don't feel that VAC being in Charlottetown is all that much of a positive. Now, there's a lot of good things that could happen in Charlottetown, perhaps fisheries or something along those lines. But I find that the people that are posted there, it's got to have the least amount of turnover possible. And I find that often the folks that are there supposedly to fix a problem are actually the ones that created it because they've been there for 15, 20 years. You could think back to your military time, you have a new RSM for 3 years or new CO for 2, and then there's turnover, and that turnover's healthy. And I'm not seeing that in that department. What do you think?
Well, VAC is, you want to talk about something that makes me really annoyed? the VRAB, Veterans Review and Appeal Board, that's one of the problems. It's incestuous. That's the phrase that I use, incestuous.
Yeah. The committees we were in July and December, we can't even get into a dialogue about them. There's like, oh no, that's like the CIA. We can't talk about that. Seriously, they would not even. It was not in the agenda, and they would not talk about it.
No, because the Veterans Review and Appeal Board is actually it is poisoned at multiple different levels, and here's what I mean. At the political level, Veterans Review and Appeal Board is very important because it's a reward system. Because those are patronage appointments.
Right.
If you've been, well, you guys know what patronage appointments are.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not going to explain them. So that's one point. The second point is that the legal unit at the Veterans Review and Appeal Board is very biased against veterans because what they're trying to do is make veterans the exact same as everybody else within the public service.
Well, it seems to me as well, Dave, that when I look at that exact issue, I'm not an expert on this by any means, but I've studied a little bit. And when you look out here in BC, for example, you know, you're working for TELUS and fall off a hydro pole. The remarks and the comments from your doctor, they're not going to be interpreted by the board that reviews you as a worker of the province. They're going to be applied. It seems to me that VRAB has self-appointed itself with the ability to interpret doctors' findings. And they seem to be the only folks across the country that have given themselves that right. And
welcome to Chapter 3 of the Dirty Little Skirmish. And
yeah.
That's the Veterans Review and Appeal Board denial culture. And it's something that Harold LeDuc and I, we speak often about. The denial culture exists. It's because these guys, as a federal tribunal or a federal board, they have the right to make even charter level decisions. And when I say charter, I mean like the Charter of Human Rights. These guys can't be undermined or adjudicated by another court.
yeah, there's no higher body to them. It's them.
That's right, and that's absolutely wacko in my mind. It doesn't make sense because most of the judges, and Harold LeDuc will verify this, most of the judges don't like veterans.
Who is the fellow that recently published a book and he was one of the kingpins of negative? He hated veterans. Did you see that?
Yeah, what was his name? He's in my book somewhere.
No pressure.
None. Yeah, your own. G.F. McCauley.
Yeah.
Okay, so just hold the phone there for a sec. What do we got coming in here?
Oh, it's just, what's her name? Linda has brought up about, you know, and we've had this conversation about VAC moving back to Ottawa from Charlottetown. Not a lot of people realize, but VAC moved to Charlottetown because the people at VAC wanted to keep a guy in a deputy minister's position who had moved to Charlottetown way back in the day. So they actually built Veteran Affairs Canada in Charlottetown for this guy. Now, a lot of people, and ourselves last year, were pushing about, hey, why can't this get back to Ottawa? And we went down this rabbit hole a fair distance, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where home base is. These people just have to do the job properly and actually be supportive of us, and they're just not doing it bottom line. No matter where that office is, it could be in Ottawa, and they're going to still treat us like shit if they're told to do it. So thanks for your concern, Linda. I just want to check another couple questions here. Okay. Is anybody complaining to their MP about the shoddy C12? No. Why not make VAC a crown corporation and remove the government entirely? They all promise the world and then screw things up. Yeah.
So, okay, let's roll with that one for a sec, Dave. What have been your experiences in regards to being treated like a client versus a veteran? I know this one comes up a lot. People hate the word client. I hate it myself. Are you getting the impression that you're being treated like a claimant at an insurance company, or are you feeling that you're being treated like someone that served the country and is owed to be treated in a different way? Do you know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're talking about. Now, we're going to talk about my case managers here for for a second. My very first case manager, she treated me with the utmost respect, kindness, understanding, and more importantly, she treated my wife the exact same way. It was heaven on earth. And then they fired her.
Right.
In 2011?
What's that?
In 2011?
That's the one. Yeah, so...
And now since then?
When I lost that case manager, I was just, like, furious. So I went without a case manager for a while. I had another one who treated me exactly like an insurance claim. The third one ignored me. The one I have right now, insurance claimant would be kind.
I guess
I refer to it as nickel and diming me.
where I bring this up is, again, like when I opened up here today, I mentioned one particular benefit, the PIA or CIA as we're going to now. And I've actually, my experience with the frontline staff of VAC has been pretty much positive throughout. There's been some growing pains and trouble. What I found to be frustrating was when you apply, you're going to get accepted or turned down or go through a bit of a process. But what we're finding with some folks is they're actually being almost scared off from applying at the very beginning. So I'll take, again, the PIA. If you looked at, say, 40% of people get denied, 60% get accepted, and then that's broken down in the various levels. We're missing a key stat there, which is how many people get scared away from applying in the first place.
You know, that's a really, really good point. And I don't know how to fix it or how to best address it. My experience is unless you are willing to go toe-to-toe with the bureaucracy and literally in some cases do barky face, if you know what I mean by barky face.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not willing to do barky face, you get no place. And
Exactly.
That's my experience entirely, unless with the exception of my first case manager.
My turn.
And I have become rather concerned because even though we have a new government with a supposedly new attitude, et cetera, nothing has changed. As a matter of fact,
Did you read Stogren's book, Dave?
Sorry?
Did you read Stogren's book?
Yeah, oh, yes. Yeah.
Did you see that one point he made in about three-quarter mark about a trend that he was starting to surmise or guess was happening was that at the case manager level, they'll often just deny a claim because they're risking, approving a big pile of money, and it's just simpler to deny it and kick it down the road, and then you get that 50% will come back and try to appeal it. Is that something that can be one of the key factors with this, that it's simply individuals? And we know from our work in the military that sometimes, it's only 2 out of the 10 that are really the driver in the group working the hardest. Do you think a lot of them could be just simply at the CM level kicking the can down the road?
I agree 110%, and that's why I think everybody needs to understand that there's an appeal process right at VAC. If your case manager says no, then you ask or demand for the exact rule from their textbook.
Their internal procedure.
That's right. That states that you are not allowed to have. And what I've found is that when I do that, people fall flat in their face, and they're more than willing to help me all of a sudden. Because once you start that redress procedure, it gets attached to their career, right?
I sound like a troublemaker, but I'm very upfront about this, like right up to Walt Natinchik being the deputy minister, that I tell everybody up front in the transition process, because often I only get a few minutes with people. I tell them right up front, be ready and assume to have to appeal every step of the way with everything you do. And and whatever you get on your award, appeal it immediately. I tell them that's what has to be done because everyone's getting a low ball, and I know where people are getting 30, 35, and I pressure them, and I said, I know you're going to get 60, 65. What did I say when you were applying? 60, 65, and that's what you got. But you got to keep pushing them and hammering them.
So one thing I wanna ask you, Dave, and while Dave's responding here, if we could get some comments coming in on this one from the net.
I've been checking questions.
When we're looking at things like culture, because you did mention that before, what I've found is there's been some adjustments that have been stated, like they want to find a way to get to a yes quicker. And I think personally that the adjustment we need is they need to start at a yes. Fraud needs to put them to a no. Willful lying and fabrication of stories needs to put them to a no. But the application should start at a yes. And that's where we need to be turning and change in terms of culture change. I think the case manager's goal should be them on your side against the system, essentially. Their mission should be to get you everything humanly possible that's legal to get you, as opposed to sitting there as the first level of adjudication almost. And so I've heard culture change stuff. I've heard it from the top, but I'm not sure their version of culture change is what I have in mind. So if I get some comments coming in on that, and what do you think about that, Dave? Is that something you share?
Well, that's definitely something that's required. There's a very, very old saying. Maybe you guys have heard it. It's called trust but check, and that should be the rule of your case managers and your frontline staff. Trust the guy that walks in the door that takes you to the veteran.
Well, hey, Sylvain Chartrand would say, and he pulled that up on a statement that Walty Natinchik made, that he told in a public statement that he wants all his case managers to treat all of us as you would your brother, sister, son or daughter, father or mother, like family. And he's pushing people to do that within the organization. Whether that's happening, we have no way of proving it. And really, if they did give us something in a slideshow at a stakeholders meeting, are we going to even trust them? Well, it's really tough.
And if you can think back to when you were either training or deployed, the guy at the top issues a command, but then he skips those levels, comes to the bottom, and sees what that command looks like when it comes out of the system at the bottom. And that's something I'm not seeing in that department. It's great for the boss to turn to the boss right below him and say, hey, do this. But I think we need to see them overtly going to the bottom of their own chain of command and making sure the message coming out of that machine is the same. Because I've been hearing for the last 2 years about culture change. It's happening throughout the system, and we've ordered it to happen. But I'm not seeing it. I'm seeing VRAB adjudicators who have still appointed themselves above doctors, able to interpret and decide on doctors. I'm seeing some face-to-face staff that think they're adjudicators to some degree. And so that's the culture change I have in mind when I hear those words. And I'm not sure they have the same thing. But let's see what's coming in.
Barry Westholm. You've had lots of questions, though. Well, okay. Do you think that VAT case managers should have security clearances, experiences, and training equitable to those they serve? Is that a...
Honestly, that's something to think about. I haven't really put too much in that myself.
Okay, guys, just limit yourself from the back and forth on there. If you have a question for the circle there, put it in there. Don't go back and forth fighting on this because I'm trying to be efficient. Okay, Nick? Yeah, you guys don't need to have a contest online here during this. Do it later. Yeah, again, guys, knock it off. Okay, here, Chance Burrows. Hey, buddy, how you doing? In your opinions, how open is the new government to subsidizing new PTSD treatment facilities, i.e. OSI clinics, non-affiliated centers, or other facilities like My Ranch idea?
Dave, you want to take that?
We know stuff.
You know what? I don't have experience at that level.
Okay.
I'll be really blunt. The last time I spoke to government about a PTSD center, I ended up getting an MP fired. So
who? I got one fired once.
You're back to Rob Anders?
Yeah.
You got Rob Anders?
So and
I know he sleeps a lot.
This is one of those things we were talking about earlier, though, where they love to punt and they love to turn around and say, well, service delivery medically is the job of the provinces. And we also got to realize that there's veterans as stakeholders, but there are other stakeholders out there. It doesn't necessarily mean they're on the same side as we come from. For example, if you have multi-million dollars coming into you to run one of the current systems, even if it's failing, are you a stakeholder in improvement or a stakeholder in the status quo? Are you benefiting from suggested change, or are you benefiting from it staying the way it is and maybe us throwing another million and another million and another million?
Pharmaceutical companies pay for universities to have studies conducted, and university doctors are dependent on that money coming in. So guess what? They're going to go with where the money comes from, and it comes from big pharma.
So that's kind of one of the things we have to work against, I feel, as a veteran community, is when we look at the stakeholders in the stakeholder summit, it's us generally as veterans and a couple of add-ons. And those add-ons are normally going to bat for you in one way or the other. And I don't want to hear the comments about the groups you don't like and all this crap. Keep it to yourself. But I think we do need to see that there are other people that, quote unquote, hold a stake in the way things are currently done. And they're petitioning the government just as frequently as we are. Because if they're getting $5 million to run a program or $10 million or whatever, the status quo is exactly what they want invested in. So what's your thought?
Well, that's why I was leaning towards the Royal Commission. Now, I understand that there are completely very, very tight limitations on a Royal Commission. The government controls the money that funds the Royal Commission. The government controls the questions that are addressed within the Royal Commission.
And it drags on for years.
Decides the length of time of the Royal Commission. So, but I still think the Royal Commission is the best way to go, because in that way, it means the average guy, like me, like a couple of guys that live in New Glasgow, they can, appear before the committee or write to the committee and either make suggestions or tell them about how or where the system is failing, and equally where it's doing well. Now, because I don't want to sound completely doom and gloom here, because there are some places that the system does well. For example, the system has allowed me to have the same psychologist since I was identified. That's important, as everybody here knows who has psychological problems. Everybody knows that that's important. And if it wasn't for that, I would have more challenges. So there are good things. But at the same time, the Royal Commission would be able to identify what the average guy actually needs. Because I think a lot of that's falling through the cracks. And that feeds in directly to your argument that there are certain people who have, financial interest in what happens.
I'm going to read Toby's comment here. I think it's got some value. He says, his comment begins, "We already have a two-tiered veterans benefit system due to the NVC. Now add in the CISIP benefit versus the VAC benefit package. We get a three-tiered system." And he mentioned in brackets, especially if ELB goes to 90%. And there's more to that comment, which I can't pull up right now, but he's got a good point here. And one of the things we encountered last year with the benefits that, the benefit tweaks, if you will, that were thrown to the community in the spring of 2015. If you take, for example, the CIB, it actually created the third tier of veterans, if you will. So as we were petitioning the government to treat us all, one veteran, one standard that they use as a term. In fact, we've got pension, we've got NVC, and then within the NVC, they decide to carve a line and say, well, these folks get the CIB and these folks don't. So you break that down, well, there's three groups right there. Then you've got the CISIP versus the ELB folks. And at the end of the day, I count no less than 5 different strains of veteran, and that's just what's happening in the modern context. And yet we have one veteran, one standard as the term. We got a gentleman who happened to land in Korea after an armistice is signed, and he doesn't get a long-term care bed. We've got vets across the country getting different property tax benefits because some wars count according to the province and some don't. And so when you break that down, it's like a dartboard as to what standard you're getting in terms of one veteran, one standard. That's how I feel.
That's an outstanding observation, and Toby hit it as well. I mean, if you really think about this, it has not been a solid use my grandfather as an example. When he came home from World War II, he had lost his eye. Shrapnel in the face. Shit happens, right?
Right.
So he came home, and the first thing they did was they resettled him and my grandmother up here in Westville in Nova Scotia, because that's where they wanted to be. They retrained my grandfather. He became a butcher. They helped finance their house, and then they gave him a pension for the rest of his life. That's not even close to what we get. Now, I want you to think about this and just do the pure numbers just for a second. At the end of World War II, Canada had about 1 in 10 Canadians within the military in one form or another, Army, Navy, Air Force, fill in the blank, Merchant Marine as well. And when those guys came back, there was an awful lot of them that were wounded and that needed help. A country of a mere 13 million paid for 1.3 million veterans to have transition and to have jobs and to train them, just so they could have brand new lives and start brand new homes and have families. And the reason the government did that was because it was an investment in the future of the country. Most of those veterans went on and they became key elements within government services. They became key elements within the economy. And I don't understand why a country of 35, 40 million can't support 40 million vets. I mean, 40,000 vets. I just don't get it.
But it's difficult too, because during World War II, the amount of R&D money that was thrown around and the factories that were all built up, and it ended up right after that in the 50s that, they were starting to build better things for the home, and it was this big the baby boom, right? It can't happen again. It is a little different, but you're right. But it is a different universe now.
Linda just put a point up there, and she was asking about survivor benefits under the NVC. And it's thanks for that, Linda, by the way. This is something that I'm good. I got some water down here. This is something that, from our perspective, we want the veteran community to be very, very aware of. As benefits come out, or they adjust or get tweaked or enhanced, whatever word they're using of the day, it's very easy to look at the dollar number at the end, but the characteristics of that benefit have as much value, or rob you of as much value as the number does. For example, if a benefit comes out and, say it's $1,000, but it's reviewed every 6 months and can be pulled from you every 6 months, and your spouse and kids don't get any of it, it actually holds less value than, say, $500 that you would get for the rest of your life, where half of it would go to your wife and your kids, and so on and so forth. If you look at the term, take it to the bank, well, there's a lot of things you can't take to the bank. Go down to the bank right now, show them a transcript or a copy of the description of the earning loss benefit, and try to get a mortgage based on that. Or show them that, oh, look, I get level 3 of the PIA. And when they'll read it, they'll realize that you could lose that at pretty much any review. And so that's something, not trying to warn people here, but the veteran community, I feel, needs to be very aware that the characteristics of a benefit can have as much help or detriment to the soldiers as the dollar figure at the end of the benefit. Dave, you got any experience, anything to add to that?
Well, yes, as a matter of fact, I do. As most people know, I have PTSD. That means my wife and my children required some help. It took us 3 years to get that help. Now, the reason I'm mentioning that as compared to the finances, if we went and had a more efficient system that allowed me to get my wife instead of having to wait 5 freaking years, the dollar value there would be considerably less, because there'd be a less effect on the kids. So you're not talking just about the immediate dollar value, you're talking about the long-term dollar value on families.
How many people?
I'd also like to mention, you talk about families.
30.
Natasha Moore, that's one of the ladies that wrote a chapter in our book. Her husband died suddenly, decided that she doesn't need a pension. Can you imagine that? This guy has a directly attributed death to work, from work. His work, he was on a ship, by the way, and yet they just sort of write them off, and that has an incredibly negative effect on society as a whole. And I think that's something that we as veterans don't really do very well at. Is we don't talk about the effect, the negative effect of, or the positive effect of the government helping veterans and how it helps long term into the family and into the children.
Okay, we got Aaron up, and then we're going to go back to the net here. Go ahead, Aaron.
Oh, it's just the human factor is totally missing, and I think again it comes down to these case managers that are just sitting behind a computer, and it's very easy to kick the can down the road and just go denial, knowing that 50% chance they might come back and ask again, and it goes off of their plate, off their desk.
Yeah, one of the things I went through personally was I had a son who was going through separation anxiety. Yeah. It was an interesting moment for me. In fact, I came home. I had a 4 and 2-year-old, and the 2-year-old didn't even recognize me. But that was actually the easier relationship because I can start anything from zero. My 4-year-old was pissed because he was used to seeing the bags at the front door, when Dad goes off on an exercise or a course or something. He was used to that. And so when he saw that and we tried to explain it to him, he didn't understand what the hell 6 months meant. But he found out quick enough. And then we come back and he was having some trouble. Here's where I wound up hitting the brick wall was, for me, myself, I could go to the doctor and say I'm having these symptoms, and I did get treatment. I have to be honest, they did look after me. But when I went forward and said I've got some trouble with my son, till I had the diagnosis of what's wrong with my son, not a dime. And the money you output as a parent to get that son or daughter or wife into care, and then you got to wait to get a diagnosis. We were in $5-6 grand into therapy before any doctor could put their finger on and go, okay, it's this. So that's one thing I experienced was, for me, I could get symptom management right away. But for my family, I had to go through the whole process of finding out officially from a doctor what was wrong with him before anyone in VAC would look at it. Once I had that, then I could get care. And, no plugs here, but I did go to a Legion service officer, and he did help me out with that. But I still had to reach into my own pocket for thousands until we got a diagnosis for him. And I'm pretty sure that's something that other people have dealt with as well.
You want to take a question?
Yeah, let's see what we got here. What do you think modern advocate groups, why do you think modern advocate groups are divided?
Johnny Collins.
I'll take a...
Should recognize people.
Yeah, fair enough.
Oh, yeah.
I'll take a stab at that. Generally, if you take myself, I wasn't all that active in the veterans community until I started experiencing some trouble myself. And then the things I had trouble with, that's my experience base, and I kind of went to bat for those. In fact, I ran into Aaron when we both were attending ombudsman's meeting. We'd never actually served together before that. And so we're coordinated and working together now just because we happen to share the same concern and the same problem and bumped into each other in a place. I think a lot of the advocacy groups come from a single issue sometimes, and as they push that forward, they're going to create friction. If, for example, your number one issue is service dogs, and you meet the next group who doesn't see service dogs in their top 10, but their number one would be Agent Orange, and you can have friction there where it wasn't necessary. What's your thoughts?
I think a lot of these vet orgs were created because, like, the peacekeeping kind of generation kind of tailored off as the Afghanistan veterans came in, and they became something where you want to have a club, and this was our group, our period in time as Canadian Forces, and they create a group as such, often because the traditional vet organizations don't want to recognize them, like starting with Korea, but World War I treated World War II guys crappy in Korea, and Cold War to peacekeeping to Afghanistan, and everyone ends up wanting their own little club. Like, okay, fuck the old guys, we'll have our own little club, and the kids will, be up in the tree house having fun, and that's just where it all started.
I think he's got a good point. We run into this situation where what I can't answer for you is why our community is like this at a basic level.
Type A's, man.
It is, but it seems that every conflict does it to the conflict after them. How everyone's basic training was harder than everyone else's. Well, everyone's tour seems to have to be harder than everyone else's, and we don't do ourselves any benefits there.
Well, 106 was a tough tour.
Well, and fair enough. I guess when you look at it, take this for example. I live in North Delta, very close to Surrey, BC. One of the big issues in one of the vet organizations years ago was turbans. Guys literally getting kicked out of the establishment they walked into because of their religious headdress. The same one that 6 divisions of them fought under the king while wearing in World War II. So I guess I've tried to look at the approach that if the king thought it was cool to have many, many thousands of these men fight for him, I should be able to have a beer and have a coffee with these guys. And yet the friction happened. So I don't know. I don't really know the answer, but I certainly know that that's been some of the stuff I've experienced.
It's been a big pursuit of mine, is to find the key to that solve. Like from day one, if you ever seen Lawrence of Arabia, this guy, he said, you're never going to get together all the Bedouin tribes of the Arab nations. They will never work together. And really, that's what it's like being an advocate at our level. Is I've been trying for 3 years now, trying to figure out that one keystone that can bring everyone together. I'm guessing it's the census thing. We'll see how it goes, though. Dave?
You know what? You hit a point that Harold and I talk about a lot, and that's the veterans culture. We come from a very combative background. I mean, let's face it. When you're in the military, you're going to work with everybody. You're there with everybody. But your job is to fight. I mean, somewhere in most work descriptions is close with and destroy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that stays with you. Now, I think, and this is just a wild stab in the dark, and I would really like to have a psychologist or an anthropologist, rip this apart throughout the veterans community. But I think what happens is that when veterans leave, like when a soldier leaves the military, he's actually leaving his tribe.
Right.
Yeah.
If you think of it at the tribal level, right? He's actually leaving his tribe, and now he's wandering around in this freaking really weird universe where everybody is equal, and we've all said this before, but civilians stab each other in the back. I have experienced that, and it's driven me nuts. And I've said it to my wife, and I've said it to my brother, and my mother-in-law, et cetera, 100 times. What the hell are civilians like this? And it's funny because each and every one of them looks at me and says, like what?
Yeah.
We've been programmed to think a certain way, to act a certain way. And so because we don't get along with civilians and we're combative or having a hard time with them, I think that translates into friction with our fellow veterans, because we're used to having a very clear structure and organization. No longer having a clear structure and organization, naturally we're going to fight among ourselves.
I think there's a lot there, and you also look at the fact that I don't think anyone really wants to be told what to do in life, but we kind of bite off the fact that we're going to have to be told what to do. You swallow that, you suppress it, and just get on with it. But then 20 years later, you find yourself out, and next thing you know, you're growing a beard because you can, you're walking on the lawn because no one's ever allowed you to, hands are in the pockets. And then the next guy comes up and tells you, well, we have to do this. And basically 20 years of go fuck yourself just kind of comes out all at once.
It's like when I first released, I joined the Legion. I started speaking at schools right off, and they told me like 2 months after I joined, oh, when you go to the school there, we're going to need you to not wear your engineer beret, the beaver. You're going to need to wear a Legion beret. And I fucking lost it, and I said, you can go fuck yourself. I went 22 weeks training, brutal engineer training for that. Do you have any clue what an engineer does? And yeah, you get out and it's a little different.
I think as well, you're going to have these unique experiences. Take any tour overseas, and even take the overseas thing out of it. You get a SARTEC buddy who's working for 20 years pulling people off hills and out of the ocean. I mean, he'll understand this just like anyone else. You get these situations where, even taking out the garbage mattered. People's lives were hanging in the balance if we didn't move water, and so even things like that, they may have sucked in real life, but they had a purpose. And then you get off the plane, you come back here, you're standing in Starbucks line behind some old bird bitching about her shave job on her poodle or something that doesn't matter. But to her, it's like groundbreaking stuff, and you just want to start offing these people. And I know I went through that. I basically, I call it minimalization. I don't know if that's a thing, but it was for me, is I looked at all the stuff that would come up. Neighbor was late for work, or someone had wine spilt on their favorite shirt, and they were acting like they'd been shot. And I was sitting there thinking, you fucking people have no idea what stress is like. And that would build the rage. And I know sometimes when I go to some of these veterans events and I hear someone talking about something that to me is lower on the scale, to them it's probably number one. And I just feel that rage burning inside me a little bit. And that's me. It's my fault. I'm probably the one that needs to tone her down and go, well, this is number one in his life. But that's kind of how I've found myself behind the 8 ball.
With the last stakeholder meeting, they went around the whole room, like 80 people got to introduce themselves and give a sense of priority. And they went to the Legion table, and the fellow representative of the Legion said, we're here, and our main concern and priority right now is hospital beds for senior veterans. And yeah, of course it's an issue, but is it at the forefront? I mean, we've been losing beds now for 50 years, and the hospitals for veterans. It's just...
But for some folks it is.
Me sitting next to Brian here, it's like, so they're just letting everyone know that they don't care about everything that's going on right now, that they're just going to stay out of the sun and focus on something from 50 years ago.
Yeah,
it's frustrating, but everyone, they were establishing their position, which is they're not in line with us.
And that's the thing, like I'm sitting there, my life very affected by the NVC, my friends very affected by the NVC, and I'm sitting at the table going, how the hell are we not talking about this right now? And yet, if you're an Agent Orange guy, your life has been totally thrown upside down by Agent Orange, and yet maybe the NVC is not top of the priority list for you. And that was one of the frustrations I think we find at these meetings is, so if that's true, let's incorporate that into the decision making. So let's get the people actually affected by Agent Orange to go have the Agent Orange discussion. Let's get the people actually affected by long-term care beds to go talk about that. Let's get us dealing with, exactly, the modern things. So put us in the room.
The families thing's in its infancy. It hasn't even been tapped into supporting the wives. Like my wife, she goes through hell with me some days. I'm not fucking shy about being honest about it. They need a lot of help. They haven't even had the first meeting yet, and they've known this is going to happen for several months now. And everyone's just still a bunch of question marks. And let's go.
So I think for some of us, we need to do some of the adjusting as well. It's not just the department. We need to remind ourselves that someone else's top priority is their top priority for a reason. But what we should be getting from the government is, okay, when it comes time to discuss the NVC, for example, let's fill the room with people that are actually affected by that damn thing. And vice versa. A good example was a really interesting colleague I met that was from the Hong Kong Vet Society. His name escapes me at the moment. But commemoration was huge for these guys because all of their brothers are still buried in Hong Kong. For me, that wasn't the top of my priority list until I saw the look on his face and I could tell it was number one for him. And so we need to come to the table. Yeah, we need to come to the table, balance that, and not approach it with, well, if you're talking about your issue, you're shitting on mine. That's and that kind of is part of what feeds into that. So that's,
and you have people, the central figures, the VAC directors and Natinchik. You got to recognize that there's the 80 in the room, but then there's another several thousand individuals hitting them as well, all on different issues, pulling them in 1,000 different directions. And it's quite a fucking game. It's one thing, like with the Sissip Claw back there, that was something extremely specific, but with what we're trying to do is get into a room where we can help change policy, and it's getting a dozen people that obviously they're always going to have a group of experts and a group of veterans and this balanced group in their mind, and then you have to battle a little bit, but in a nice manner, to try and create a policy that has some of the shreds of what we've gone and analyzed in the community, and it's a fucking real dance.
One of the things that's coming through right now is I actually think it's important for us to tackle as a community. I'm getting some disagreement coming through on what I've said, and you know what? That's fine. And in fact, it's actually good because I'm noticing, at least the ones that are coming up right now, the disagreement's coming forward in a polite way. No one's saying you're a complete
fucking
asshole for saying that. You're stupid. You don't care about us. They're coming forward and going, okay, well, I see it this way, or I disagree because of this point.
And we're going to disagree every step of the way, but we need to do it in a classy manner.
And that, he's right. He's hit the nail on the head. That is something that we as veterans need to change about how we're doing business. We need to stop with going for the throat and putting our knee on each other's jugular every time an opinion comes forward that's different. And honestly, we suck at it. We do. And I think some of the stuff Dave's mentioned, we were trained to fight. We were trained to take the problem and solve it no matter what. But now we need to kind of temper that a little bit. So yeah, bring forward the comments on the disagreements.
Tell me I'm wrong.
But keep them within the parameters of being respectful for each other.
We
Dave,
both have PTSD, and if you come at us like, hey, fuck you, then we get all defensive, and it becomes a deteriorating situation.
so let's
Dave?
hear from Dave on that. Have you experienced that crap, particularly on the internet too?
Yeah, I mean, you always get hacked on for your position, and that's okay. It's one of the reasons why I've actually stayed away from the advocacy groups, because I have an idea. I put the ideas forward either to politicians or through the media or through a book, if you really want to get stupid. And trust me, writing a book's a huge pain in the ass.
No doubt.
Barry Westholm's supposed to be writing one right now.
Is he?
He can't. He's typing to me right now.
Is he? Okay.
Go ahead.
But yeah, it's a real challenge. But I think a lot of emotions ride heavy. You made an outstanding observation, Brian, when you mentioned about the Hong Kong vets. I mean, they feel certain things, just like we feel certain things. I've been one of the oddballs that has had the good luck, I suppose, of having done a significant amount of work while we were at peace, the so-called peace during the Cold War. Then the peacekeeping, the true blue hat peacekeeping crap, the transition into a much more aggressive stance within Bosnia and Kosovo, and then into Afghanistan. And what that's done, for me anyway, it's made me realize that there's a lot of people that have experienced an awful lot of different things. The variety is amazing. Like the variety of experience is amazing.
You said that.
And we just, I think you really hit it on the head when you said that we just have to accept that everybody else, what they went through, sucks.
Remember,
but they did it for us, you know what I mean? They were paying it forward.
the last day of Afghanistan, the last guys are coming off the last plane, and they turned to Kevin Barry and this guy to ask a few questions, and they asked, well, you know, what's going on? What are veterans out there going to be feeling? And you said there's 40,000.
Yeah, I guess they were asking, the media was asking me, you know, what does this brick of 40,000 people think? So provide me the one answer that they think. And I don't really remember how I responded to it, but something along the lines of, there's 40,000 people, there's 40,000 opinions. You know, I know guys that I deployed with that think we shouldn't even been on that mission. And that's fine. You know, there's political disagreement within, you know, even a section you would have been deployed with. Guys see it a different way. But we somehow, somewhere, there's so much emotion that we kind of lost that ability to sit back and hear the other side. But what I think about it, Dave, is specifically this. I give us a pass for a reason. Because when you're tweaking the benefits that we're getting or not getting, you are deliberately dicking around with my health and my family. And I don't really know how to approach that from a non-emotional point of view.
That's a very solid point.
And
because
so,
I feel the exact same way.
well, yeah. So when a benefit that all the other guys got has been withdrawn from me, and that definitely affects my progression, definitely affects my family, affects all my friends. I kind of lose the ability to sit in a room and hear opinions that are, well, that doesn't matter, or kind of get over it. And that's where the blood starts to boil a little bit. And what I find with this, there used to be a job that a lot of veterans took, and that was advocating for the guys still in uniform. You might remember, look back in quote unquote the decade of darkness, it was actually veterans coming forward saying, this is a death trap of an aircraft, that vehicle's a piece of shit, that boat's ready to sink. Because the soldiers, sailors, and air personnel couldn't do that. And now we're so pitted against each other by the way the government has created the different tiers of veterans that all this infighting that's happened due to the different tiering of veterans has actually pulled us away from our job of advocating for the dudes that still serve.
The last stakeholder meeting, first thing in the morning, the first day, Don Leonardo was allowed to get up and go off on a rant and actually walk up to Natinchik and go, thanks for nothing, and then storm out the door. And then we had...
Let's kind of avoid that to some degree.
Yeah, we had 1, 2, 3, 4 gong shows were allowed to go on, and I'm looking over at Natinchik. He's about 10 feet away from me, and he's smiling from ear to ear that he's allowed this to go on. Perry Gray got up and stood up on the stage and went on to a written speech that went on for 10, 15 minutes. And at the end of it saying that, the minister and everyone should just be fucking fired on the spot. Yeah, we've seen a lot of problems with that sort of shit. And it's really important that everybody can work together. And
we need to tone her down. And I think a lot of times...
so vicious.
Put it this way, you got 4 pots boiling on the stove and you only got 3 lids, and you're doing this like whack-a-mole trying to keep a lid on everything, and it's easy for guys to get on each other's throats. I really don't have I don't have a solution, to be honest, because I feel that emotional twist in me too, but I think that's the source. You're fiddling around with my family's well-being when you fiddle around with veterans' benefits. And I find it very hard to sit in any room and let's just discuss that as if we're talking about a hockey game. We're not. We're talking about life and death here. So what do you think, Dave?
I'm with you 100% on that one. But the one phrase that I constantly use, and I'm trying to push it out there, is that veterans as a community are fractured and disjointed. And the government is using that. And when I say government, it doesn't matter what color the government is. The government uses that to advantage, because when you are fractured and disjointed, you cannot, speak with a solid voice. So you're absolutely right. You're hitting it right on, you're hitting the nail on the head. And the more fractured we become,
the happier they are.
It is for whomever sits in the hot seat. Because right now, I'm going to be blunt. I mean, right now, the minister's probably laughing at us.
Why?
Why? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Why? It's because we are fractured and because we can't get together on one thing. There's nothing more dangerous than 1,000 voices saying the same thing. There's nothing more advantageous for him to have 1,000 voices saying different things.
Oh, yeah.
And that's essentially what's happened. So I really do think you hit the nail on the head. That we're at each other's throats, but I think it's part of a general plan. And I don't mean to sound all mysterious or like this, but I just...
Yeah, as soon as you start talking like that, everyone goes, oh, well, it's like conspiracy. But no, really, it's just the way the government organizes itself to deal with us.
Exactly, divide and conquer mentality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, Dave, I know for me here, and my brain's kind of starting to get the old scramble mode going on as we talk about a number of different items. So I'm going to tap out in about 2 minutes here.
We only have 10 more minutes.
Yeah. So take it away and give me your opinion on what you think. If you could discuss what your top 3 issues are right now. If someone said, "Okay, Dave, here's you and the minister. You got a minute. What's your top 3?" What would they be? What would you talk about?
See, topic number 1 would likely be pensions. And what does he really mean by pension option?
Yeah.
What the hell's that?
What the hell's that?
Yeah, let's define what let's define what a pension is. Let's define what the various options that he's talking about are, and what we see as options. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't, and I say this at a great deal of danger. When someone is at a different place in life, say they're in their 70s, 80s, 90s, a lump sum may actually serve them well. That they want to leave something to their family en masse because they know they're dying or what have you. But for the most part, a pension is something that is a continuous, clear feed of well-established money coming into the family. And that's my point, is that it provides stability for the family. So I'd like to know exactly what the minister means by pension option, and I really want to have that pension sorted out. For me, and I know there are many people that will disagree, I'm a huge Pension Act fan.
Yep.
Because it's something you can pick up and plug in. It's nothing new. Everybody knows how to handle it. So that's number 1. Number 2 for me would be the JPSUs. You got to address that gap. You got to get the guys the help they need right away, especially the families the help they need right away as well. Mm-hmm. And by doing so, you create stability for the family so that they can move forward.
Can you mention that Legion thing?
Well, let's hear his number 3. What's number 3? Go ahead.
Okay, so and number 3 for me is the Veterans Review and Appeal Board.
Yeah.
I would like to see them removed.
Yep.
And replaced with a pure medical evidence methodology.
Actual doctor or two?
Pardon me?
An actual doctor or two?
Yeah. People that actually understand medicine.
God forbid someone who actually served. That'd be nutty, wouldn't it?
Yeah, a military doctor. Wow.
Okay.
So, and the reason that I say that is because they'll be able to make the very clear and concise link between service and injury, and that is one of the major issues within the Veterans Review and Appeal Board. So those are my top 3.
So Dave, is it fair to say with the VRAB that the fact that there aren't any, ex-military doctors in there, that it's a political posting that, they don't actually want someone who's too close to the issue with veterans?
I'm sorry, you broke up a bit. That's my phone. Can you say it again?
Do you think that it's a political posting that, they don't want anyone who's too close in their heart being a veteran to be actually in that, the VRAB?
I think that once you get to VRAB, and this would be better answered by Harold Leduc, by the way.
Absolutely.
I think that once you get to VRAB, that there's a certain level of brainwashing that occurs. And when I say brainwashing, I don't mean they tie you down.
Influence from the old guard.
Words from the old guard, but also there's been considerable evidence that the legal unit within Veterans Review and Appeal Board actually has a brutal bias towards veterans, and that when the Office of the Veterans Ombudsman did a review using another law firm to review the cases that VRAB had done, what they found was that VRAB had erred 60% of the time. That's 60.
Yeah.
Now, that's old data. Okay, fine. They claim that they've changed things. I don't buy it because I did my own review about 2 years later, and the results were the same, if not worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments. Like I said, I'm going to tap out here, but I put on the table for me that my top is pension. I would move from there to the VRAB, and my third is stop punting on jobs. Stop turning to the public sector and the different groups, great groups, by the way, that are doing a lot of work out there. But stop handing off the file and saying, oh, we're working on jobs because we're working with this outfit here. No. Have a jobs plan. Release less people. The ones you are releasing, find them work in the civil service. The same way, if you got hurt at fisheries, they would try to find you a job in immigration. They need to be doing that with soldiers. So that's my top 3 for me. What do you think?
Well, my arena is mental health. I pushed this party to commit 20 mils to inpatient facilities. I pushed to get us a mental health committee to do that. Seeing like about 0.1% traction on this. They're moving as slow as possible, so it's not high on their priorities. So that's my battle. And of course, I'm a plaintiff in the case, and I got to go in with that. But you and Mark Campbell are much, your brain's working a way that you have the ability to cover more of these bases than I do. So I focus on the mental health thing.
So if I can ask something here from the folks that are putting comments on here. Give us your top 3. We don't need the big speech or diatribe about, why you feel that way. But give us your top 3, just bullet points. 1, 2, 3. This is what they are for me, because I'm going to be going to the next stakeholder meeting, and I want to go armed with your points of view and your comments. Because if I walk in there and say the people I already associate with feel this way, that's one thing. But if we turn around and say, oh, by the way, we're also armed with this information, the 1, 2, and 3 from this community here is such, that'll help me a lot. I'm going to tap out here. Thanks, Dave, for joining us on the line.
Pleasure's mine, guys.
And thanks to all you folks for keeping it civil and calm and honest at the same time.
All right. All right, we're out, Dave. Love you, man.
Take care. Bye now.
Bye-bye.